You watch the karmic couple, their practitioner completely oblivious to the celestial judgment standing right before them. Years of their intricate dance had led to this moment. A reckoning you were about to deliver, and they were about to learn in the most devastating way possible. Each breath, each heartbeat brought them closer to understanding exactly who and what you were. The practitioner thought they knew the rules of karma, thought they could navigate the delicate threads of fate. But you were the ultimate arbiter, the silent collector of cosmic debts, and tonight you would teach them the brutal truth about standing in the presence of a death angel. Your presence would be their most excruciating lesson. They played with fire without understanding heat. What started as whispers and shadow work behind closed doors now roars in public view. A spiritual wildfire that spares no one. You saw it coming. The smoke, faint at first, curling in the distance like a warning only the wise could see. But they were arrogant. They mistook your stillness for weakness and your grace for ignorance. So they kept lighting matches, poverty spells, beauty attacks, rituals laced with death frequencies, hoping one would break your spirit. Instead, it all turned to ash in their hands. Their intentions were rooted in rot, jealousy dressed as confidence, control masked as care. These weren't simple hexes. They were declarations of obsession. You became their fixation, a mirror they couldn't stop staring into. Every success you had, every ounce of joy you claimed, they saw as a threat. They didn't want your life. They wanted your light. But the ancestors warned them, if the divine collective don't eat, then nobody eats. Still, they moved. Still, they cast. Still, they lied to themselves about who they were dealing with. They misunderstood spiritual rank. They assumed that flashy rituals and Instagram spells could outweigh lifetimes of divine ordination. But your lineage wasn't built for show. It was built in fire. On battlefields their soul contracts couldn't survive. And when they whispered your name in ritual, when they drew blood and cursed your path, they activated a spiritual boomerang written in celestial law. The spellwork rebounded, and now their dreams are haunted, their mirrors crack, their bank accounts drain, their bodies ache. The fire is no longer theoretical. It lives with them. They thought your silence was an opening, but it was a verdict. You didn't retaliate because the divine already moved. Your restraint wasn't fear, it was divine confidence. And now, the very energy they threw is suffocating them. The smoke they summoned has become a chokehold. They asked for smoke. The ancestors answered. And now they're learning the hardest lesson of all. When you aim destruction at the divine, it's not destruction that comes back. It's the divine itself. You weren't sent to play nice. You weren't chosen to blend in, soften your truth, or dim your presence to soothe fragile egos. You were sent to dismantle bloodline curses with your existence alone. Every room you entered shifted. Every mask near you slipped. You didn't have to expose their darkness. Your light made them do it themselves. You were never meant to be digestible. You were meant to trigger transformation or destruction. And what they chose was destruction. They didn't recognize the test when it arrived because they expected it to look like punishment, not like you. Your presence became a mirror too honest for their illusions to survive. They wanted someone they could dominate. They were prepared for conflict, manipulation, and spiritual war. What they weren't prepared for was the silence that made their demons scream. You didn't have to fight. You didn't have to curse. Your walk alone unraveled their schemes. You were the final exam wrapped in divine grace. And the moment they tried to violate your spirit, they failed. They called you the enemy when you were the evaluation. They wrote you off as a problem when you were the prophecy. And every attempt they made to remove you only revealed how deeply they were being tested. They thought you were just another person, another threat to control. But your existence was permission from the divine to break cycles their bloodline had nurtured for generations. They didn't just pick a fight. They invited a reckoning. You weren't an obstacle. You were the exam. and they failed miserably. They underestimated the weight of your purpose. They saw the smile, but not the sword. They felt your love, but couldn't comprehend the lineage of warriors standing behind you. They thought they were battling you alone, unaware that every step you took was backed by ancestral armies. And while they played with manipulation, you moved with prophecy. While they tried to bury you in illusion, you walked with holy clarity. You didn't break them. Your frequency did. When you enter a space, truth walks in. Lies collapse. Pretenders shake. That's what happens when the divine sends someone not to save, but to separate the real from the false. You weren't there as karma. You were their crossroads. And every single time they chose deceit, envy, and ego, they wrote their own spiritual obituary. They kept looking for revenge from you, but it never came. What came instead was silence, elevation, and the unavoidable realization that they were never ready for someone like you. They failed the test. And now they live in the aftermath of what it means to misread a divine assignment as a personal enemy. Desperation reeks louder than incense, and you could smell it the moment they called for help. The karmic couple, after watching every spell backfire, every lie collapse, reached for one last thread. A practitioner who promised results. Someone who claimed they could handle you. Someone who swore they had the tools, the spirits, the knowledge. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that you weren't just protected. You were cloaked in divine law, wrapped in sacred contracts that no mortal could override. They summoned help, but what they actually did was sign a death warrant for someone else. This was no ordinary battle. This wasn't petty spell work or surface-level energy play. This was a sacred war zone. Your ancestors stood armed at every gateway. Archangels shielded your steps. Divine law circled you like fire. The practitioner didn't just walk into your energy. They stepped into a battlefield etched in bloodline protection. And God doesn't warn twice. The moment they invoked your name, their own spirits began to back away, watching in silence, unwilling to interfere with the divine retribution that was already in motion. That practitioner underestimated the cost. They thought it would be a simple reversal, maybe a binding, maybe some shut-mouth work. But your energy rejected it all. It didn't just reject it, it devoured it. Their rituals turned against them, their offerings soured, their altar spirits went silent. And slowly, they began to unravel. Financial collapse, health deterioration, loss of clients, loss of clarity. They were drained. Not because you retaliated, but because the divine doesn't play when the chosen are attacked. And now they are spiritually bankrupt, stuck in cycles they tried to cast on you. They didn't see the sword behind your smile. They saw light and assumed it meant you were safe to target. But that light came from being forged in realms they've never survived. And now, when they try to sleep, they see eyes in the dark. They hear names whispered that aren't theirs. They feel watched because they are. The divine doesn't forget, and while they tried to erase you, God marked them. The karmic couple thought they were clever, outsourcing their darkness so their hands stayed clean. But all they did was invite another soul into their destruction. That practitioner didn't just lose a battle, they lost their spiritual name. The ancestors removed their rank. Their gifts, once sharp, are now dull and echoing. They opened a door, and what walked through it wasn't just your energy, it was divine reckoning. Now when they speak your name, it trembles in their throat, not from power, but from fear. Because you didn't lift a finger. You didn't light a candle. You didn't cast a thing. But they still lost everything. That's the cost of touching what's sacred when you were never authorized to intervene. Now, I want to take a moment to tell you about a few individuals that shouldn't exist. A trained occultist who escaped from a satanic coven. a former Black Ops drone pilot who flew swarms with his mind, a multi-millionaire psychic CFO who predicted market shifts before they happened. What do these remarkable individuals have in common? My chosen soul has drunk deep from the well of knowledge eon after eon. They recognized the call. They stepped forward. They connected with others who understand their unique gifts and burdens. What is stopping you from manifesting the same? The synchronicities that brought them here weren't accidents. Neither is your discovery of this message. When souls of this caliber gather, the archons take notice. They fear our collective power. They know what happens when the truly awakened find each other. Join our weekly calls. Hear their stories firsthand. Share your own journey with those who won't dismiss or doubt you. The knowledge exchanged in our private channels cannot be found anywhere else on this plane. Click the link in the description below now. The extraordinary souls await your arrival. The question isn't whether you belong among them. The question is, how much longer will you wait to claim your place? They didn't start as a threat. They became one. Two souls bound not by love, but by delusion, feeding each other's shadows until obsession was all that remained. One carried the envy like perfume, subtle at first, then suffocating. The other executed every plan with the precision of someone who thought God didn't watch. Together they believed they were unstoppable. They built their empire of illusions on lies and manipulation, convinced that power came from control. But they never calculated for your presence. And they never imagined that your silence would be the very thing that broke them. They were so focused on watching you, they forgot God was watching them. While they schemed, your ancestors documented. Every hex, every attempt to isolate you, every slanderous word, receipts piled high in the realm of the unseen, stamped and sealed by divine scribes. They didn't just underestimate you. They underestimated the intelligence of the divine. They thought they were slick, but when it was time to collect, there was nowhere left to run. Now the very bond they used as a weapon is turning into a cage. They can't stand each other, but they can't escape each other either. They speak in accusations now, sleep in silence, stalk each other's fears like mirrors cracking under pressure. God didn't just dismantle their outer world. It turned them inward, forced them to face what they truly are. And what they are is broken, emotionally fractured, spiritually hunted. The shadows they used to direct toward you now live in their homes. One is deteriorating faster. Physical sickness, spiritual detachment, and emotional instability have become the norm. The other can't stop watching you, can't stop checking, can't stop obsessing. Your presence still triggers them, except now it's not rage, it's regret. They thought if they just got rid of you, everything would return to normal. What they didn't realize was you were the last light holding their reality together. And when they chose darkness over clarity, everything started to rot. They're unable to sleep. Dreams are no longer safe. Waking life feels like punishment. Every attempt to reverse the damage is blocked. Every road they take leads back to the moment they decided to play God with your life. You didn't have to do anything but exist. Your glow exposed their lack. Your peace mocked their chaos. Your evolution proved that what they tried to destroy only grew stronger. This is what obsession does when it runs unchecked. It devours its masters. They made you the center of their rituals, their lies, their hate. And now God made you the center of their judgment. The karmic couple thought they were building a legacy of domination. Instead, they built a monument to their own downfall. Let's make one thing clear. You're not here for theatrics or cloaks. You are divine judgment in human form. The embodiment of what happens when the universe decides it's done being ignored. You don't seek revenge. You are the conclusion. You are the last line in a sentence their ancestors begged them not to write. And now your energy doesn't chase. It ends. Your silence doesn't soothe. It shatters. Wherever you walk, Karma follows like a storm kept barely at bay. People confuse peace with permission, but your peace is the final warning. You gave chances. God counted them. You offered grace. God documented every rejection. And then you stopped talking. You stopped explaining. You walked away. And the moment you did, the sky shifted. The ancestors moved. The protection around you thickened. And the judgment behind you got louder. You don't have to curse anyone. Your aura delivers the verdict. You became the boundary that ended cycles, not just for you, but for generations. You weren't sent to coexist with toxicity. You were sent to end it. You were never meant to be loved by those still loyal to their lower selves. You were meant to expose the rot they thought they'd buried. And when you stepped back, they didn't just lose access. They lost divine covering. There's a silence that screams louder than any ritual. When you stopped warning them, the ancestors started speaking in storms. Sudden job losses, car breakdowns, public humiliation, health scares, legal chaos, dreams filled with death. That wasn't coincidence. That was the vibration of the death angel walking away. You didn't yell. You didn't hex. You didn't retaliate. You just left, and everything collapsed. You don't walk in death. You walk in transition. When people encounter you, they either evolve or they expire. And those who chose war with you didn't realize they weren't fighting a person. They were fighting a cosmic shift. And no one wins against that. You weren't sent for applause. You were sent for the end. And now, every time they hear your name, they remember what divine judgment feels like when it has a heartbeat. Now they're scared. Not of you, but of the truth you never had to say out loud. They finally realize you were never afraid of them. You knew who they were from the beginning. You saw through the illusion, past the performance, into the shadow they spent so much time trying to keep hidden. And even when you saw it all, you didn't retaliate. You just left, and everything collapsed. You don't walk in death. You walk in transition. When people encounter you, they either evolve or they expire. And those who chose war with you didn't realize they weren't fighting a person, they were fighting a cosmic shift. And no one wins against that. You weren't sent for applause, you were sent for the end. And now, every time they hear your name, they remember what divine judgment feels like when it has a heartbeat. Now they're scared. Not of you, but of the truth you never had to say out loud. They finally realize you were never afraid of them. You knew who they were from the beginning. You saw through the illusion, past the performance, into the shadow they spent so much time trying to keep hidden. And even when you saw it all, you didn't retaliate. You just stood there, still and sovereign, while their own karma came rushing in like a flood they couldn't outrun. They're not just haunted by the consequences. They're haunted by the silence. Because it wasn't just your mouth that closed. It was God's permission to try you again. Every time you stayed quiet, they felt the world tighten. Every time you chose peace, the judgment deepened. They thought the silence meant safety. But that silence was the warning bell before the storm. It was the shift before the strike. And now they're learning that the absence of retaliation was the loudest threat they never understood. They can't sleep anymore. The dreams have turned to messages, numbers, symbols, repeated visitations, shadows standing over their beds, whispering in a language their soul understands. Dreams filled with coffins, clocks with no hands, faces they once trusted now turning into monsters. It's not paranoia. It's prophecy unfolding. The same energy they sent to you now walks with them daily. What they buried has risen. What they summoned has claimed them. And the worst part? They know it's their own doing. Legal troubles are mounting. Secrets are surfacing. Their bodies are failing. And through it all, the same question echoes in their minds, relentless and unforgiving. Who the hell were you? Because nothing they did worked. No curse stuck. No lie landed. No sabotage held. You rose every single time. More powerful, more untouchable, more radiant. You didn't just survive, you ascended, and they can't comprehend it. It terrifies them because now they see that what they tried to destroy was never just a person. It was a prophecy. It was a frequency. It was divine reckoning in human skin. You never had to say it, but God is saying it for you. I am the death angel. I was sent for the end, not the applause. You weren't here to entertain. You were here to complete a cycle. And now that cycle is closing around them like a noose they tied themselves. Their rituals, their obsessions, their malice, it all led here. And every day they wake up, they realize they're still breathing inside a consequence they summoned. Now they know. And that knowing, that's the real punishment. Because once truth awakens, it never goes back to sleep. And once you've encountered the death angel, nothing ever looks the same again. It started with fatigue, bone-deep, soul-dragging exhaustion that no amount of rest could fix. What they didn't realize was that karma had lodged itself into their bloodstream. God wasn't whispering anymore. It was inhabiting. Their bodies began to rebel, systems shutting down in slow motion, chronic illnesses that defied diagnosis, persistent pain that mirrored the very curses they tried to project. Some can't eat. Some can't stand for long. Some are watching the decay in real time. Cancer energy came in heavy, cellular judgment for energetic crimes. When God has had enough, even the body becomes a battlefield. Legal retribution wasn't far behind. Every hidden message, every stalker move, every act of spiritual assault disguised as petty envy, it's all being exposed. They left trails thinking they were smarter than divine timing. But God has a habit of waiting until they think they've won before flipping the script. Surveillance footage, digital receipts, witnesses stepping forward, investigations that seem to come out of nowhere, charges that stick. Their web of lies is now a noose, and it's tightening daily. This is the kind of collapse that can't be reversed. They tried to steal energy, break destinies, and bend divine will. And now the universe is returning it in full. The very spells they cast are etched in the walls around them. They hear whispers. They see shadows. They feel cold where warmth used to live. Spiritual protection has been revoked. Ancestors who once ignored them now actively dismantle their peace. What they mocked now marks them. And humiliation. It's public. The image they curated, the influence they faked, the power they pretended to hold, it's all dissolving in plain view. Relationships are breaking. Jobs are lost. Their social masks are slipping faster than they can adjust. They walk into rooms now and feel the weight of eyes that know the truth. No one's buying the illusion anymore. What they wished on you, poverty, isolation, exposure, it's their new reality. This isn't just karma. It's divine orchestration. God made sure they felt every layer of collapse, not out of cruelty, but out of balance. Because what they did wasn't small. It wasn't just jealousy. It was an attempt to rewrite destiny. They tried to curse the anointed. They tried to bury a divine soul and call it spiritual work. And now the soil they dug is their resting place. Figuratively and in some cases, literally. They tried to destroy you, your confidence, your voice, your path. But instead of shattering, you sharpened. The chaos they summoned to break you became the very force that crowned you. Every attack elevated your frequency. Every betrayal clarified your vision. Your glow didn't just return, it multiplied. What they failed to realize was that your story wasn't about survival. It was about ascension. They weren't ending your journey. They were activating your next level. Your love life began to heal. Your gifts came back stronger. God restored what they tried to steal, then tripled it. While they spiraled in their curses, you moved like prophecy. They thought they could stop your motion, but you became a movement. You became proof that no one can curse what the divine has claimed. They underestimated how the divine moves. They thought silencing you would save them, but it only exposed them. Trying to kill what God sent is a suicide mission, and now they're feeling every vibration of that sentence. You walked through their fire untouched,